Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Premiership Quarter. Today, I am going to be going over my AFL 2024 finals predictions. Now, this is going to be like a part two of my first video where it's a ladder prediction. And what I've done is I've gone through the entire 2024 season and I've tipped each game and I've got the ladder. The only difference that I have between my original ladder prediction and this one here is that Gold Coast finished seventh in my original prediction and Melbourne finished sixth. But I don't think that's really going to change, and all I need to do is flip the home, and I can just do that quite simply. I thought of doing like the entire fixture as another video, but it would have just taken too long and would have been a nightmare to edit, so I don't want to do that. But yeah, let's get started with this video. Quarterfinal one is Brisbane versus Sydney at the Gabba. If you've just watched my Brisbane video, then you would know that I have Brisbane winning. I think with Sydney's tall backs being a big weakness, with only McCartan being the proven player, I think with Danaher and Hipwood, they can really take advantage. I don't think Joel Hamling or Dane Rampy have the athleticism to stay with probably Hipwood, because I would say McCartan takes Danaher. And I think one of them would kick at least 4, maybe even 5 goals. I also think they'd struggle to contain both Rayner and Bailey. I think either of them could kick 3 or 4 goals very easily, and the other can just play higher up the field and use their foot as a great weapon, because it is. I think Charlie Cameron, they've got Cunningham, who I think is a pretty good matchup, but I don't think they'd be able to keep with Rayner and Bailey. I also think the midfield battle would be quite interesting. You've got Grundy versus McInerney. Grundy probably has got McInerney around the ground, but McInerney probably has him in terms of tap work. He's younger. He's probably got more of a jump because Grundy has got the injury problems. I also think with McInerney, the way he is able to use the forward handballs is really important. I think that can catch Sydney out a couple times, and that could really help Brisbane start to get a lead early on. If we're to talk about Sydney's forward line, I think their tools would be relatively well nullified by the Brisbane tools. I think Andrews would be quite difficult for them to, I guess, tame as a player. They don't really have a Billy Frampton. I don't see McDonald or McLean doing that, and I think Amadi would be too important in terms of goal scoring to do that to Andrews. And I think Payne can take the other with Dodie when he's back from his injury to be able to nullify the Swans' tools. I think Starcevic would probably take Heaney or Papley, and then the other would probably be taken by Coleman. And then you've got McKenna, who I think would be taken by Hayward. I think McKenna's probably got the bit of extra height on Coleman to be able to go with Hayward in the air. And I think he'd be able to burn Hayward a bit quicker with his pace rather than foot skills than what Coleman would be able to do. So if that's the case, Brisbane win. They go through to the prelim. Next up is Giants versus Adelaide. I think this one's quite close because I think the biggest strengths from Adelaide and the biggest strength from GWS can kind of cancel each other out. I think Adelaide's biggest strength is obviously their forward line. You've got Tex, Thilthorpe, Fogarty. And then for the Giants, you've got Taylor, you've got Himmelberg, you've got Buckley, you've got Iden in the back line. And I think it'd be a really great battle to watch. You'd probably put... I actually think they might put Taylor on Thilthorpe and then have Buckley on the 1v1 matchup against Walker. And if that doesn't work, it's a simple switch. I think Himmelberg would probably take Fogarty. If Fogarty plays higher up the ground, it allows Himmelberg to intercept and play his best and use his foot as a weapon. And then Iden would probably take Rochelle, as he's more of that medium small forward who's going to try kick goals and get out the back as much as possible. In terms of the midfield battle, I think Briggs quite clearly has it over O'Brien. I think he'd be able to muscle his way around O'Brien and quite easily get around the ground better than what O'Brien does. In the midfield battle, I think Dawson and Green would be a great watch. I think Green's really up on an under, in an under, sorry, and he'd be able to bully the Crows midfield a little bit. I also think that Kelly and Cornelio would be able to get the Crows on the outside. And then if you were to look at the Giants forward line, unless Cadman has a really, really good season and proves himself as a best 22 player, then I don't know if the Giants really score outside of Toby Green. Obviously, Hogan's a great player, but I think he just had a great season last year, and I don't necessarily see the same production coming this year. You've also got Riccardi, who might make a jump, but I'm not too confident in him doing that. And I see Michelini taking him quite easily. I also think Wayne Miller could be a great weapon for Adelaide to use against the GWS to be able to cut them through the middle. But I think simply based off of experience and the surge that GWS play with, I think they'd just be able to get numbers up and press Adelaide into their defensive 50 and control the game. So I think GWS would win, which sets up a really interesting semi-final. In Elimination Final 2, it's Gold Coast versus Melbourne. It would be at the MCG, but here it's just with the 6 and 7. I think Melbourne actually doesn't have as much of a on-talent advantage as what you might think. I think Witts and Gawn can be a great matchup. I think Witts could quite easily dominate against Gawn in the middle, but Gawn, the damage he can do outside there, sitting back, taking intercept marks, going forward if he has to, and kicking important goals, I think that could be a bit of an edge for Melbourne. I also think the experience with Viney and Petrarca and Oliver, if he's available, then I think that could overtake the young, inexperienced Gold Coast midfield. If you look at either end, I think Gold Coast forward line, whether it consists of King, Walter, Casbolt, Sam Day, Lukosius, I think it's a toss-up. I would have, if Walter's healthy, it'd be King, Walter, and Lukosius. But I think it's a good matchup against Melbourne with May, Lever, and then it looks like it might be Tom McDonald, which is quite interesting. I think that's quite fair. And then the smalls, I don't see, outside of Ben Ainsworth, a lot of danger with Gold Coast smalls. And I think Melbourne would be able to deal with that. And then if you look at Melbourne's forwards, you've got Van Rooyen, you've got Frisch, you've got maybe Ben Brown, you've got maybe Tom Fullerton if you want to back up Ruckman. And then you've got obviously McAdam, Pickett as some of the smalls. I think Gold Coast with Collins and Ballard would be able to deal with it quite well, actually. And someone like Mac Andrew, if he has a breakout season, which I think he will, I think he could control the air quite well against Melbourne, which would be really important for Gold Coast. However, I see Melbourne as the more experienced team, and I think that will just get them the edge as well as I think it will be played in Melbourne. So I will be going with Melbourne. Now, second qualifying final is a big one. It's Carlton versus Collingwood. Obviously, there's no real home ground advantage with this one. I think in the last few matchups we've seen, it's been one-sided at times. Like you had the Collingwood Carlton first game, where Collingwood were quite convincingly beating Carlton, but that was when Carlton were really poor. And then you had Carlton winning by about 4 goals in the back half of the season against Collingwood, where they just couldn't kick straight. I think it would be probably the best matchup of the finals unless they meet again. And I just see, I think the midfield of Carlton might be a bit too bruising for Collingwood. I think if Walsh has a Brian Lowe caliber season, if Cripps is healthy by that stage, Chera, Hewitt, you've got Doherty going in there. I think they will probably get the edge. I also think with Mackay being fully healthy, Kerno being healthy, and Fantasia being in that team, I think it'll be really, really difficult for Collingwood to contain that. And I think Carlton will be able to deal with Myercheck as the only real tall forward that shows any fear for Collingwood. So I will have Carlton winning. Now, in the first semi-final, it is the Sydney Showdown. Sydney versus GWS. It will be at the SCG. And I think this one's also very interesting. Sydney, from what I remember, don't really get the wins over GWS. You think about the 2021 elimination final where they got it by 1 point due to a lot of inaccurate kicking. You remember the Toby Green one from early last year. And I think that trend continues. I don't think that Sydney will be able to get on top of GWS's midfield. I think Briggs at the moment is better than Grundy, and he'll be able to really work Grundy into the ground. And I think with Taylor, Buckley, and Iden, that GWS will be able to get on top of Sydney over the 4 quarters. Now we've got Collingwood versus Melbourne, which is a redo of the qualifying final from last year. Now I see Melbourne as a potential team rather than a yes team. And I think Collingwood do have the edge. I think their speed, how clinical they are in front of goals at most of the time compared to Melbourne and what we've seen from them in the last couple of years. And I just think with Dacos coming off a loss, with Pendlebury, his leadership, and with all the smalls against Melbourne, who tend to control the air, Collingwood will be able to just go small with their forward line and be able to beat Melbourne. So that sets up a very interesting prelim final one of the grand final rematch, but this time up at the Gabba, and that changes things. I think Collingwood, coming off 2 really tough games, then having to travel up to Brisbane, I think with the forward line against maybe no Murphy, which I haven't really talked about, but then he might not be playing due to his concussion issues. I think with the bonus of Dodine Ashcroft coming back, they've got the week off. I think that Brisbane are able to get the job done. Then we've got Carlton and GWS in the second prelim final, which will be at the MCG. And I see Carlton winning quite convincingly here. I think it's going to be tough for Taylor and Buckley to deal with Kerno and Mackay. No matter how they're good, I think the delivery that Carlton from the midfield will be able to get to those two will be elite balls with Newman, Sard, Doherty, Williams if he's healthy. I think Walsh will have a great game. And I think GWS will just struggle slightly to score when Wiedering's back, with Hogan as the only real genuine target that they have. So now we have a prelim final rematch from last year, Brisbane versus Carlton. Now, I said in my Brisbane video that I see Brisbane doing similar to what Hawthorn did in 2013 after the 2012 loss against Sydney, and that's exactly what I'm going with. My premiers for 2024 are Brisbane. Now, I think their midfield battle will be very interesting. You've probably got Dunkley on Walsh. I think for this season he'll be slightly better than Cripps. He's more damaging as well. You've probably going to have to deal with Danaher and Hipwood, which I don't think Kemp or McGovern will be able to deal with outside of Wiedering. I think Payne has shown that he can deal with Kerno. And Andrews would absolutely body Mackay, no matter how good Mackay is. I think that the Carlton Smalls, even with Fantasia, who Starcevic would go to, they'd be able to deal with it. And I don't think that the Carlton Small defenders would be able to deal with the mosquito fleet of the Brisbane small forwards. So yeah, that's my prediction. If you like the video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this type of content, and leave your thoughts on the comments below.